Hi class. I'll be discussing the first part of Unit 1, which is the review of the different social work concepts, since this is not your first major course. So, as a review, when we say social work practice, we are referring to the professional application of the values, principles, techniques, all of the theories in relation to social work, the methods, the strategies, and the type of clients. So it's everything that we do in the professional context. So how we are applying these theories and how we are living with the values and principles of social work. And that is all falling under the collective term known as social work practice. And it's important to learn the different perspective or approach, or how are we looking at the different situation of our clients, so that you'll appreciate more when we discuss deviance. Where are we coming from, and how should we stop ourselves from thinking, let's say, negatively, or concluding immediately with our judgment. So these perspectives will help us to have a framework as to how we should view the situation. So we will be discussing three main perspectives for this video, and then later on in our synchronous class, we'll be discussing the other approaches. So social work derives knowledge from the different sources, and we usually say that we're borrowing that field of knowledge from practice. Generally, we have three types of knowledge: the tested knowledge, the hypothetical knowledge, and the assumptive knowledge. When we say tested knowledge, from the term itself, these are established through scientific study. And these are actually coming from the different professions, and they are also better um, clarified and enhanced through social work research. We also have hypothetical knowledge, which is telling us that we don't really end with having the tested knowledge. So wala ta ka-end nga may theories na. But we keep on asking what could be the other reasons, or how can we be ensured that what we are applying are updated or relevant, given that we are dealing with human beings and we are prone to changes, and that we are also affected by what's happening around us, which are also very dynamic. So there is a need to continuously look at how these theories are really existing when they are being checked with the realities, because these can also vary with the culture and situation. So we do use these great deals of theory in the field of social work, and many of these field of studies have been undertaken, and that would also require further investigation, so that we can see that this theory is already established. So sa social work, there is a possibility nga ang ginapatihan ta nga tuod-tuod, let's say it is already established by a theory years ago, could be not totally or absolutely true in the situation of the Philippines or in the present times, because things have changed. And hypothetical knowledge will help us come up with uh, updated context as to the reality and how we should be dealing and helping our clients in the process. And the last type of knowledge is called the practice wisdom, or the assumptive knowledge, because we see that what we know about the profession should not be limited to the things that are already published through the books or things that could have been presented as tentative solution through the hypothetical knowledge. But this field of knowledge can also come from the actual experiences through practice wisdom. That's why field practice is really very important in social work. So we can perhaps say that the more experience one has or has had in the practice, the more assumptions or suppositions he tends to make in relation to his work. So through practice, we get to appreciate more how the theories can be applied and how can we um, better help our client when we are faced in the similar situation. So we do not say that a particular step or solution is already true to all, because one of the principles is each of our client is actually unique. So we have to deal with them individually. But those things that we have learned from our previous encounter with the client will help us become better social workers. So in this assumptive knowledge, we can also say that there is indeed no doubt that practice wisdom is very useful. But there is also a great danger when we only rely with one type of knowledge. So when we only rely, let's say, with the assumptive knowledge, or we rely so much with the practice knowledge. Okay. It's also important that we keep on looking at how we are accepting a certain type of knowledge. So the constant need to reflect on what we know about dealing with other people. This is called a profession because we do not just subject the client or the community with a mere trial and error. There should be a systematic process. That's why it's scientific based, aside from being philosophical based, that would also tell us why is it we have to be very careful when dealing with our client. Another perspective is the person and environment, which is very important concept in social work. And you will be meeting this type of concept um, as you continue to learn about the profession. And of course, in your actual practice when you work later on. And this approach is the concept that people are actually being influenced by their environment. But in the same way, we also get to influence the environment. But in this perspective, we highlight the importance of understanding the individual and their behavior through the environment. And a person's environment, along with their experiences, will actually help shape the way we view the world, how we think, how we respond to the way that such environment is also throwing things upon us. Sometimes we refer this person and environment as the pie, but it's important to understand the definition of social environment. And when we say social environment, this is actually the network of everything. And these are all overlapping social systems. So this is very much related with systems perspective, but it's a different approach because the focus is on the influence that an individual has with the environment, how people can be heavily influenced by their environment. So because of that kind of perspective, we are also embracing the idea that if we want to help a person, it's also important to change or create some modification in the environment. So amo na siyang iya nga implication because we look at how we are being influenced by what's happening around us. And whether we like it or not, we will be affected by the realities that we have. Some may be in a manner that are more direct or or heavily influential, tagang iba niya of lesser influence, but it does not mean that we're not influenced at all. And this would include the ecological systems, the culture, the institution. So this perspective is actually very important in learning deviance because the culture has very strong implication when we try to make assessment as to an action is deemed by others as deviant or not. But of course, as social workers, we should not judge others based on what they're doing or the realities or the way they're living their lives. Okay, so non-judgmental attitude is one of our fundamental principles in the profession. So we also have the concept of social situation. And social situation is actually one of the segments of social environment. It's like the focus. So meaning that's the lens dira kama focus in trying to describe the situation versus the social environment, which is everything, the network of the overlapping social systems. That's why social situation is smaller, it is more immediate, meaning that's the reality, that's the present situation that the person is dealing when there are a lot of things happening around that person para sa iya mo lang na ang the matter, that's the priority of the person or dira ang iyang much energies. So it's the social situation. And most of the time, when clients would come to us, it is because of a certain social situation, be it in terms of their identity, their role, how they are feeling about it, what had happened. And things are being perceived differently among people. You're gonna meet people um, experiencing the same social situation in which their response are different or the way they are being changed by the situation or the environment would also vary. That's why it's really exciting to work with people because you'll see a lot of amazing things, unique things unfolding, unique reflection as to their reality. Very much related to this is the concept of social functioning and social role. So when we say social functioning, it actually refers to the interaction between the forces, two forces, the capacity of the person and the demand expected from that person. And part of our job is to help mediate, match, resolve, if not reconcile, this disparity or gap when a person fails to meet that demand. So, how can we help individuals strike that balance between their coping ability and their environmental and situational demands? And that explains why social functioning is very important concept in person and environment perspective. Then we also have the social role, which is the recognized pattern of behavior and activities from an individual occupying a certain position in society. And most of the problems are coming from the context that a person is expected to do more than just one role. So most of the time, it is when a person fail to fulfill that role that problems are created, and it would also affect. It will also have an impact with the life of other people because when a person fails to do his or her role, the others have to take the burden. So sila ang madugangan ang role, and it will create problems or for some people opportunities if we are to apply strength perspective, which you will discuss in your later session. So these problems could come from different factors, and if not, um, most of the times it's a combination of many factors: the person's inherent characteristics, belief, past. Some people may be very much affected by what had happened, And of course, the factors in the environment and the situation, the demand, the pressing, let's say, the element of pressure given by the time or lack of resources. So sometimes it's the same problem na kung i-present sa iya in a different, let's say, time, no? Ma-survive niya tani. But at that particular point, sunod-sunod yung problem. So it had affected the way the person had responded to that problem. So we look at social functioning problems in a manner that has to be so mature. We have to widen our perspective. And that's the reason why we're presenting more than one perspective so that you also get to look at things with more than just one reasoning. And social workers' efforts are also aimed at changing the situation or the environment, how a person is interacting with that environment. And it is always and should always be aimed towards enhancing the social functioning in the individual, because after all, that's our ultimate goal in the profession. And there are a lot of ways. Of course, there could be more than ways, but here are usually some of these, like how identifying the personal inadequacies could also help us address the problem. So, why is it the person is behaving that way? What are the reasons? The change strategies could also be directed toward the environment if the later that beset with the inadequacies or of the situation is already beyond the coping capacity of the individual. So much of the intervention would come from helping the person develop more his or her coping capacity to strengthen that resources that the person has. The change strategy can also be focusing not just on the individual but also in the environment. So later on, you're gonna meet terms like environmental modification, in which you're trying to change the environment so that you can help the person. Then the concept of micro level, which represents the interaction on the individual level, and that includes how the person is affected by the family, the support system, the belief, spiritual belief, the different types of relationship. The meso level, which includes the small groups, family, school, churches, neighborhoods, community organization, peers, and macro level, which represent connections to the systemic issues within the large systems, the society itself, and the different problems that we have around us. And the last for my recorded discussion is the systems based perspective, which states that behavior is influenced by a result of the factors that work together as a system. And all of these are actually interconnected. Each part plays an important role in the function of the whole. So each of the parts are contributing to how the whole is being seen in general. And then the whole, in turn, must support and sustain the parts. So they affect one another. In the context of this theory, instead of mesosystem, they call it as the exosystem, because it's already outside the microsystem. But all of these factors, not just the family, not just the school, but the wider perspective, the macro system, the political system, the economics, the society itself, the culture, the identity that we have in relation to our nationality, the things that we are being um, socialized or trained to believe are all affecting about how we are contributing to the general whole. So whether we like it or not, we are affecting the system. And coming from that perspective, we also say that if we want to change the system, it's important to change the microsystem. And if you also want to change the microsystem, it's also important to look at how exosystem and macrosystem is creating problems with the microsystem. So they are interconnected. So in this theory, the roles are also explored, how the routine tasks, the behavior of people within the system would affect the interaction. And many people would feel that it is their role that would identify them about who they are. But we know that we're also saying that it's more than that, that the general um, sum of the parts is not the exact representation of the whole, and vice versa. So this is human beings that we're dealing with. That's why we cannot 100% provide uh, an explanation that would explain how a human being is being changed or transformed, or the capacity of that person. So it's more than that. But these are good attempts to understand the person better, so that we'll get to discern in a way that are more informed, and we can come up with intelligent assessment with the situation. So I'll be ending with systems-based perspective. So I hope that you'll see the differences or the distinction between the person and environment perspective, the evidence-based perspective, and of course the systems-based perspective. Thank you so much, class, and I'll see you later.